I'll never forget the sound my fridge made that night. It wasn't humming. It was hollow, the echo of emptiness. Inside sat nothing but half a bottle of milk, 2 eggs, and a stick of butter. I held the refrigerator door open longer than I should have, as if somehow, staring into that cold void would magically produce dinner. My stomach growled, but it wasn't just hunger. It was rage. Because just hours earlier, I had seen it. The picture. A glossy photograph that felt like a knife twisting in my chest, my husband, smiling ear to ear, standing in front of a brand new luxury car with a giant red bow on top. His arm draped around a woman half my age, his mistress. The caption read, "For my love. You deserve the best." Meanwhile, I was standing in a kitchen where I couldn't even afford groceries. This wasn't the life I had signed up for. When I married him, we had dreams. He had charm, ambition, and promises. Oh, so many promises. "We'll build a life together. You'll never have to worry about a thing," he'd said. So I gave up things for him. My career, my independence, pieces of myself I thought were worth sacrificing for our family. And for years, I believed him. I believed that when he stayed late at the office, it was because he was working hard for us. I believed that when money was tight, it was because business was unpredictable. I believed that when he snapped at me for asking about bills, it was just stress. But belief has a cruel way of shattering when the truth finally claws its way out. It started small. Groceries. Bills. Simple things. I'd make a list of what we needed, careful to keep it cheap: rice, beans, bread, vegetables if they were on sale. Yet when I asked him for money, he would sigh heavily, like I was a burden. "Do you really need all that? Can't you budget better?" he'd snap. Budget better? On what? On the air in my lungs? There were days I skipped meals just so he wouldn't notice how empty the pantry was. I told myself it was temporary, that things would get better, that this was just a rough patch. But rough patches don't explain luxury cars wrapped in red bows for mistresses. I remember scrolling through that photo over and over again, each time feeling my hands tremble harder. Her smile was smug. His was triumphant. And me? I was invisible. That's when the questions started to eat me alive. How long had this been going on? How much of our money, my sacrifices, had gone into funding her perfect little lifestyle? While I rationed cereal, was she sipping champagne in leather seats? It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. The signs had been there, hadn't they? The way he started dressing better, buying cologne he never wore for me. The secretive texts he claimed were work emergencies. The business trips that left me alone, counting coins in the kitchen drawer just to buy bread. I had ignored it all because I was desperate to keep my marriage intact. But now, staring at that empty fridge, the weight of reality crushed me. I wasn't just married to a liar. I was married to a man who would rather see me starve than deny his mistress luxury. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was something darker, sharper, a cold determination. Because here's the thing, betrayal cuts deep, but it also awakens something primal. That craving for justice, for balance, for revenge. And as much as I wanted to crumble, as much as I wanted to scream or throw things or beg for answers, I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't stay silent. Not anymore. The door creaked open just after midnight. He strolled in, whistling, tossing his keys on the counter like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just seen him plastered all over social media, parading another woman in a car I could only dream of driving. "Hey," he said casually, loosening his tie. "What's for dinner?" I looked at him, looked at the fridge, looked at my empty wallet. And for the first time in years, I didn't see my husband. I saw the enemy. That was the night everything changed. The night hunger turned to fury. The night I stopped being the desperate, invisible wife. And the night I began plotting the revenge he never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of his snoring. He was sprawled across the bed, one arm dangling lazily, his face serene. He looked like a man without a care in the world. Meanwhile, I lay there staring at the ceiling, my stomach empty, my mind buzzing with images of that woman, her manicured nails wrapped around shiny car keys. The contrast made me sick. He slept peacefully while I plotted in silence. I went about my morning routine carefully, almost robotically. Coffee. Dishes. Picking up the dirty laundry he never bothered to handle. Every movement felt mechanical, but my mind was spinning faster than ever. I needed to understand just how deep his betrayal went. So I started digging. I'd never been the snooping type before. I used to pride myself on trusting him. But trust had been weaponized against me, and I was done being the fool. When he stepped into the shower, I unlocked his phone. He thought he was clever, changing passwords every few months. But he wasn't clever enough. His birthday. His mistress's birthday. Their anniversaries. I tried them all. Click, unlocked. And there it was. A flood of texts, photos, and videos. My heart hammered as I scrolled, each message slapping me harder than the last. Can't wait to take you on another trip, baby. Dinner tonight? Don't worry, I'll tell her I'm working late. The car looks perfect on you. Worth every penny. My chest tightened. Worth every penny? That was our money. My sacrifice. My skipped meals. My sleepless nights worrying about bills. And he spent it on her. Scrolling further, I found bank statements. Vacations I never knew about. Jewelry I'd never seen. Dinners at places I couldn't even afford to walk past. It was like discovering an entire parallel life he had built without me. And the cruelest part? He played the role of a struggling husband at home, sighing about bills, criticizing my poor budgeting, telling me to just make do. I wasn't his partner. I was his cover story. His alibi. His fool. That day, as he left for work, I followed him. My pulse raced the entire time. He drove across town, not to the office like he claimed, but to a sleek apartment complex. A place far too luxurious for the budget he pretended to live on. I parked at a distance and watched. She came out. The mistress. Long legs, expensive handbag, hair shining like it belonged in a shampoo commercial. She walked straight into his arms, kissing him like I had ceased to exist. And then they got into that car. Her car. The car he bought her while I pinched pennies for bread. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every part of me wanted to storm over, scream, claw, demand answers. But something stopped me. It wasn't fear. It was strategy. Because I realized in that moment, I had power, not the kind of power they flaunted with shiny cars and smug grins. No, my power was quieter. Hidden. The kind of power that grows in the shadows and strikes when least expected. And I knew, if I played this right, their downfall could be so much sweeter than any public screaming match. Still, the humiliation ate at me. That night, I went grocery shopping with what little cash I had. I stood in the store aisles, watching other families pile meats, fruits, snacks into their carts, while I calculated every cent of mine. A loaf of bread. A carton of eggs. A few instant noodles. That was all I could afford. At the checkout line, the cashier barely looked at me. But I felt the stares. The pity. Or maybe I was just projecting my shame. Either way, when I got home, he was there, sipping whiskey like a king on his throne. He didn't notice the bags I set down. Didn't notice the way I avoided eye contact. All he said was, "You need to start planning meals better. I'm not eating this cheap crap every night." I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. But instead, I stayed quiet. Because silence, I realized, was my weapon. Days turned into weeks, and the double life became clearer. She posted pictures online, diamond bracelets, spa days, wine glasses clinking against his. She even tagged him once, but quickly deleted it. He had her living like royalty while I rationed leftovers. But here's the thing, the more I saw, the less it broke me. Pain hardened into resolve. Humiliation sharpened into strategy. Every time I skipped a meal, I whispered to myself, he thinks he's clever. But I will be cleverer. And in the quiet hours, I began to plan. Not just survival, but revenge. The kind of revenge that doesn't just sting, it destroys. That night, lying next to his oblivious sleeping body, I thought about karma. People like him, greedy, arrogant, careless, always think they're untouchable. They believe their lies are airtight, their secrets unbreakable. But I knew something he didn't. I knew patience could be the sharpest blade. And I was ready to use it, The day my breaking point came was a quiet Sunday afternoon. The kind of day that should have been peaceful. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table staring at a stack of unpaid bills, my fingers trembling. Electricity, rent, gas, all overdue. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. Hunger had become my constant companion, like a shadow that never left. The sound of the garage door jolted me. He walked in whistling, tossing his keys on the counter with a grin stretched across his face. He looked happy. "Did you cook?" he asked casually, as though groceries appeared by magic. I looked at him, really looked at him. His crisp shirt, his polished shoes, the faint smell of expensive cologne clinging to him. And I thought, he doesn't smell like home anymore. He smells like her. He poured himself a drink and sat down across from me, oblivious to the tension in my body. "What's with the face?" he asked, swirling the glass in his hand. I gestured to the bills spread across the table. "We're 3 weeks late on rent. The utilities." He cut me off with a scoff. "You worry too much. It'll be fine. It'll be fine." The phrase echoed in my head like an insult. It wasn't fine when I stood in grocery aisles counting coins. It wasn't fine when I skipped meals so he wouldn't notice how little food we had. It wasn't fine when I wore the same old shoes until the soles wore thin. Meanwhile, his mistress was out there flaunting diamond bracelets and posting selfies inside the luxury car he bought her. Fine? No. Nothing about this was fine. I remember gripping the edge of the table so hard my nails dug into the wood. "You don't understand," I said through clenched teeth. "We're drowning. I can't keep patching holes while you..." Again, he cut me off. "You don't contribute, so maybe let me handle the finances, okay? All you do is complain." Those words, they lit a fire inside me. Don't contribute? Did he forget the years I worked double shifts to help him through school? Did he forget the nights I stayed awake sewing buttons on his shirts before big meetings? Did he forget the sacrifices, my career, my dreams, that I put aside so he could chase his? I contributed everything. And he threw it all away for leather seats and lipstick-stained kisses. That night, while he slept, I cried silently. The kind of deep, soul-breaking sobs you can't even voice. Tears pooled on my pillow, but underneath the grief, a new feeling began to form. Resolve. Something in me snapped. I wasn't going to be the quiet, starving wife anymore. If he wanted to treat me like a nobody, fine. But he was about to learn that nobodies can be dangerous. The next morning, I made coffee like usual. I kissed his cheek as he left, playing the role of the dutiful wife one last time. But the moment the door closed behind him, I moved quickly. I pulled out a notebook, a pen, and I began to write. Not poetry. Not diary entries. Evidence. Dates. Times. Amounts. Screenshots of his bank transactions I had quietly emailed to myself. Photographs of his car parked at her apartment. Copies of the texts I had found on his phone. Every betrayal, every stolen dollar, every lie, it all went into my little black book. Because if I was going to strike, I wanted my blow to be undeniable. Days passed, and I played the part of his silent, obedient wife. He thought he had me fooled, thought I was too broken to fight back. But inside, I was sharpening my weapon. I began confiding in a friend, just one, someone I trusted with my life. She listened, eyes wide with shock as I spilled everything. "You need to leave him," she whispered. "Oh, I will," I replied. But not quietly. The turning point came when he slipped up. He left his email open one evening, drunk and careless. And there it was, a payment confirmation for the mistress's luxury car. The final nail in the coffin. He hadn't just bought her the car. He'd financed it in our names. Which meant if he defaulted, I'd be held responsible. That was it. That was the moment the last shred of hesitation evaporated. He didn't just betray me emotionally. He had shackled me to his betrayal financially. And that I would not forgive. From that day forward, every move I made was deliberate. I smiled when he came home. I cooked when he demanded dinner. I played the role perfectly. Because the closer he thought I was to submission, the less he would suspect. But inside, I was planning the storm that would wipe the smug smile off his face forever. I didn't know exactly when or how it would unfold yet. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. When my revenge came, it would strip him of everything he held dear, his mistress, his money, his pride. And I would make sure he remembered me not as the wife he starved. The funny thing about betrayal is this: once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. It's like a crack in glass. It starts small, but soon the entire thing is shattered. By this point, I wasn't just angry. I was calculating. Because if he thought he could strip me of dignity, leave me hungry, and still walk around like a king, he had another thing coming. I started with quiet research. Late at night, when he was passed out from too much whiskey, I combed through his financial records. His arrogance made it easy. He never thought I'd dare look. And what I found? It was worse than I imagined. The mistress wasn't just a fling. She was an investment. Trips, jewelry, luxury spas, all charged to our accounts. And the car? Oh, that wasn't the only thing he bought her. He was funneling money into her rent too. Every stolen dollar was a brick in the house of lies he built around us. But here's the thing about building a house of lies: when it falls, it crashes louder than anything else. Step 1 of my plan was simple: gather everything. I printed bank statements, copied emails, saved every screenshot onto a flash drive. Every time my hand shook, every time tears blurred my vision, I reminded myself, this is my weapon. This is my freedom. Step 2, build allies. But as the woman who finally starved his empire of lies, I started dropping small pieces of truth with his family. Not the whole picture, just enough for them to start doubting him. Oh, he was late again? Strange, he told me he was working overtime. I guess he's busier than we know. Or, funny, I saw a strange charge on our joint account. Do you think it's work-related? I planted seeds. And seeds, when watered with suspicion, grow fast. The turning point of my planning came when his sister, of all people, called me one night. I don't want to meddle, she whispered, but I think something's wrong. He told me he was at work tonight, but I saw him at a restaurant. With someone. I nearly smiled through the ache in my chest. The web was beginning to tangle him up on its own. Thank you, I whispered. My voice shook, but not from sadness. From anticipation. Step 3, prepare my exit. I opened a separate bank account, quietly, carefully. Every bit of cash I could scrape together, I funneled away. He never noticed. He was too busy funding his double life. I also found a lawyer. A kind woman who listened patiently as I spilled everything. When I handed her the flash drive and binder of evidence, her eyebrows shot up. You've been living like this? She asked, horrified. Yes, I replied, but not for much longer. Then came the hardest part, waiting. Days stretched into weeks. I played my role flawlessly, cooking, cleaning, even laughing at his pathetic jokes. All while my evidence grew, my bank account grew, and my resolve solidified. But I knew one thing: when the strike came, it had to be public. He thrived on reputation. He loved to parade himself as the loyal husband, the successful provider. So if I wanted my revenge to sting, I needed to tear off his mask in front of an audience. The opportunity came sooner than expected. He announced we'd be attending a family dinner. His parents, siblings, cousins, all of them under one roof. He wanted to show off, no doubt. Pretend everything was perfect, and I knew instantly, this was it. This was where the truth would detonate. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. Not flashy, not desperate. Just quietly elegant. A dress I hadn't worn in years, something simple but dignified. When I walked into that room, I carried more than just myself. I carried every sleepless night, every empty stomach, every moment of humiliation. Dinner started pleasantly enough. He bragged about work, about business deals, about his so-called sacrifices. He laughed loudly, filled his plate, filled his glass. I sat there, silent, waiting. Until his mother asked a simple question. So, how are things at home? You two seem so happy. That was it. The spark. I set down my fork, folded my hands, and smiled. Well, I said softly, that depends on how you define happiness. The table quieted. All eyes turned to me. And in that silence, I began to unravel his empire. I spoke calmly, methodically. About the late nights, the missing money, the empty fridge. About the car. About the mistress. And when his face paled, when he opened his mouth to deny it, that's when I pulled out the binder. Receipts, screenshots, bank statements, photographs. I laid them down one by one like cards in a game of poker. Only this wasn't poker. This was checkmate. The room was silent, except for the sound of paper sliding across the table. His mother gasped. His father swore under his breath. His sister stared at him with wide, accusing eyes. And him? He sputtered. Denied. Begged. His hands shook as he reached for the evidence, but it was too late. The truth was out. The king's mask had fallen, and everyone could see the fool underneath. As I gathered my things and stood, I felt lighter than I had in years. Enjoy your dinner, I said softly. I'm done starving. And with that, I walked out, leaving him drowning in the wreckage of his lies. When I walked out of that dinner, I expected to feel shaky, maybe even guilty. But instead, I felt free. The night air hit my face like a blessing. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by his lies. I wasn't the starving, desperate wife begging for scraps of love and money. I was the woman who exposed him. And God, it felt good. I stayed at my friend's house that night. She welcomed me with open arms, handed me a warm meal, and for the first time in months, I ate without shame. I remember taking that first bite and feeling tears in my eyes. Not because of sadness, because of relief. I didn't have to ration. I didn't have to beg. I didn't have to starve while he wined and dined someone else. That night, I slept deeply, peacefully. And when I woke up, I knew there was no going back. The fallout hit fast. My phone buzzed endlessly with messages. His family called me, some apologizing, some stunned into silence. His sister texted me, I can't believe it. I should have trusted my gut. As for him, he called. He begged, voicemails filled with excuses, lies, promises to make things right. He swore she meant nothing. He claimed the car was just a mistake. But the thing about mistakes? You don't repeat them over and over again, funding vacations, jewelry, rent, and luxury cars while your wife counts coins for bread. No, that wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And I was done paying for his choices. The legal process started soon after. My lawyer worked quickly, building the case with the evidence I'd gathered. Financial infidelity, misuse of joint funds, emotional cruelty, it all painted a damning picture. He fought, of course. Tried to intimidate me. Tried to threaten me with nothing but hot air. But the more he barked, the clearer it became. His power was gone. His family didn't defend him. His friends avoided him. Even his mistress, oh, that was sweet, dumped him once the money dried up. Turns out, the car wasn't enough when the credit cards stopped working. The day the divorce papers were finalized, I walked out of the courthouse with my head high. I wasn't rich. I wasn't suddenly free of all pain. But I was no longer chained to him. And that, to me, was priceless. He, on the other hand, walked out alone. No wife. No mistress. No respect. Just debts and shame. But the best revenge wasn't just exposing him. It was thriving without him. I picked up part-time work, reconnected with friends, started eating healthier. Slowly, I began to rebuild, not just my finances, but myself. Every small victory felt monumental. Buying groceries without fear. Paying rent on time. Smiling at my reflection without that hollow ache in my chest. Freedom doesn't come in a single burst. It comes in little steps, each one lighter than the last. And with each step, I remembered who I was before him. Who I was beneath the scars of betrayal. Months later, I saw him by accident. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. The arrogance was gone, replaced by bitterness. He tried to strike up a conversation, but I simply smiled politely and walked away, because the truth is, revenge wasn't about screaming or fighting or making him suffer endlessly. Revenge was letting him choke on the silence of my absence. Revenge was watching him crumble under the weight of his own lies while I stood tall, finally free. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply no longer needing it. They say karma takes time, but when it arrives, it doesn't knock softly, it tears the door down. He thought I'd always be the starving wife. Instead, I became the woman who starved his empire of lies until it collapsed, and I'll never forget the lesson. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. Sometimes it's about finally choosing yourself. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments. Backhand index pointing right, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? And of course, subscribe to Red Silk Revenge for more dramatic tales of love, lies, and unforgettable payback. Because here, every betrayal has its reckoning.